everyone, and welcome to the Commander Pod, your Magic the Gathering podcast for all things Commander. My name is Kelton Howell.
And I'm Spencer Simpson. Last week, Wizards officially rolled out their beta test of their casual Commander brackets, power level brackets system. And maybe it's not even casual, because CDH is on the list.
Yeah.
So it is a power level bracket system.
Yeah, and on the title slide, it even said, like, Commander Matchmaking System. And so I think that gives us a good hint as to what it's meant for and how they imagine us using it. So for those of you who may not have watched the presentation or read the article yet, we'll give a very brief overview, but you should go read the article. It goes into a lot more depth there. They presented
they did an announcement video, right? They did an announcement video, and I don't even think the announcement video did justice to like what the system is. And there were a lot of people that were kind of gripey about it, and other people were like, okay, well, it explains more in the article, you should go read the article, which we'll link in the video as well.
We'll absolutely link it. So just as an overview, there are 5 different brackets. The first one is Exhibition, which is for ultra casual Commander decks where winning is like a secondary goal for the deck, that it's trying to accomplish something like have something common with all the art, or, you know, make a very narrow theme work, something like that.
Yeah, you're memeing.
Yeah, you're kind of memeing. Yeah. And then in the second bracket, we have Core, which is the average current pre-con deck power level.
Yeah. And then we have Upgraded, which is their third bracket, which is beyond the strength of an average pre-con deck, which, spoilers, I think is a very broad category. And so we'll talk about that as well. And then 4 is Optimized, the highest power commander you can play, right? Just all the best stuff outside of the 5th bracket, which is CEDH, which is just defined by high power and like a tournament meta that you're trying to play.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're, first off, extremely stoked to have a system that they are working on and that can help people have Rule Zero discussions, especially in the context of matchmaking. One of the first things that I think Gavin wrote the article, one of the first things that he said in the article was, you know, this likely doesn't affect your local play group. If you already have a pod that you're playing with regularly, you've already got something going on. You've already like acclimated to whatever the meta for your pod is. But when you're going to a store or you're going to an event like some sort of MagicCon or something like that, you need to know which table to sit at and how to have those discussions. And so these brackets are a matchmaking tool to help you find games and decide on a shared experience for that game.
Yeah, because people aren't pub stomping, hopefully, in your regular play group. And if they are, you can talk to them about it. That's a much more difficult conversation with a stranger at a random table. And we're stoked that Wizards is trying to solve this problem, and also stoked that they prefaced it with that fact that it may not affect your play group, because we feel like we've reached a pretty solid level of play that we like to play in our play group, and a way of discussing the different levels of play that we like to play. And we've posted videos about those. You guys have probably seen
we
them.
made a ton of content. And we also have commanderpowerlevels.com. You can read more about how we talk about power levels and how we treat them in our group there. To give you an idea, you know, the commander brackets are 5 brackets, 1 through 5. They have pre-cons at a 2, and then like high power casual at a 4. And that we have 5 categories across those 3. So where they have 2 to 4, we have, you know, low, mid, high, mid, and high across just those 3.
Yeah, which is why I think 3, if just to jump into it, why I think 3 is just broad. It's an incredibly broad category. Bracket 3. Yeah, exactly. Because you have precons, which feels very narrow, right? Sure, there's some variance in like precons, but they're talking about like the average precon performance. Yep. And then optimized, which to me is, you know, just
anything goes.
Anything goes. The best thing you can be doing. Like, why would you be playing in bracket 4 if you're not playing your Fierce Guardianships and your Force of Wills and whatever?
Yeah.
And then you have 3, which is literally anywhere in between. And you can play some of these game changers that they're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. There's just so much room between a precon and a no holds barred deck experience that I think you're gonna see so much variability in what you get at a 3 table.
Yeah, absolutely. But I do think like that's not to discount like the quality of the system, I think they did a really like decent job in this beta, right? Like,
Oh,
I
absolutely.
think Game Changers was like a really cool idea.
I
For those
love
who aren't
that.
aware, Game Changers are cards that will significantly impact, in the opinion of the committee that put this together, a commander game and the power level of your deck, essentially, right?
Yeah, and in context of the brackets, in 1 and 2, you don't play game changers. And in 3, you can play 3 game changers, and then in 4 and 5, you can obviously play as many game changers as you'd like.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Which is a little bit different from how we defined our system. Again, you can go watch the videos, check out commanderpowerlevels.com. Game changers to us would be things we consider power level outliers, right? And a subset, I guess, of power level outliers, because you could kind of have them either direction.
Sure.
And these would be power level outliers for like a mid power deck and below. So we typically weren't playing anything like these game changers in our mid power decks, which would be just above like your average deck, I guess, right? Above
Yeah.
an upgraded pre.
The middle of the bell curve by our
Yeah.
estimation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that we felt was really missed in the introduction video, and was addressed a little bit in the article, but we have found is extremely important as we've talked about power levels, and that's intent and deck building with intent. So when we talk about deck building, we always say, okay, well, what is the power level that we are building to, so that as we're making deck building decisions throughout the process, we're being mindful of the experience that we're trying to create with the deck. And I think that this does that. Although overnight, everybody who had a deck in Architect or Moxfield, it automatically got labeled, right? But if you're building a new deck, you can think about which bracket do I imagine this deck playing in, and how do I make decisions so that it fits well into that bracket.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say Moxfield at least made an amendment to that. I don't know if you saw this.
I
They
haven't checked.
were just marking decks as brackets, right? Based on the
Sure.
number of game changers you were playing. And I don't think he was even checking for combos. Maybe it was. I think it might have been checking for combos at one point. But now if you have a deck, it says this deck is at least power level X based on the cards in it. However, the builder hasn't assigned an intended power level for this deck yet, which I think
that's
is
cool.
very cool, because I think that was some criticism they got pretty quickly from a lot of content creators and just consumers of users of Moxfield and consumers of this new bracket system, was that, hey, I built this deck. It's pretty strong. It's saying it's a 2, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's like, there's no measuring for that. And
Yeah.
I mean, we have in the past built $25 budget decks, right? That could win on turn 3 or 4. And there's no accounting for that, because the individual cards aren't particularly strong. They're not on the game changers list. But the intent of those decks was to be very strong and powerful within that budget. So
Yeah.
they're virtually CDH decks on a budget, right?
Sure.
Would we bring it to like an unrestricted 4 or 5 table? Probably not, because they're playing under different constraints, right? And playing a lot of
Yeah.
those game changers.
It was a
We were
different
saying-
category.
Right. We were basically taking this bracket system and saying, cool, we're going to now apply the same thing, get rid of the game changers, and we're going to set an intent for each of these, and we're going to set a $25 budget, right?
Sure.
We just
Yeah.
like copied and pasted that and then turned things down by,
Yeah.
however much.
Totally. And it is very easy to look at the power bracket system and think of ways to break it, right?
Yeah.
To be like, oh, well, I built this deck with no extra turns and no game changers, so it's a 2, but it wins on turn 4, right?
Right.
So that is why that intentionality is so important, because if you're intentionally trying to break the bracket system, that's going against the spirit of the bracket system, right? So the things that you need to be asking yourself are like, what is the kind of game that you want to have? What is your deck actually trying to do? And how quickly and efficiently is your deck trying to do that thing? And that's going to help you have a better idea, rather than just a list of cards that you are or are not allowed to have in the deck.
Yeah, absolutely. And we realize that like the number of bad actors are like relatively small, that will be saying, oh, I built this under the restrictions of a 2, but I want it to perform like a 4, but I'm going to play it at 2 tables.
Sure.
Right? Because bracket 2 tables, because it performs that well, I'm going to go stomp people, right? That's like a relatively small group. However, I do think there are a group of people that will just build a deck. And I think this is what has been happening a lot of the time. And part of the reason we thought that intentionality in deck building and that power levels start at the deck building level is because people will just build a deck and then say, oh, this says it's a 2, or whatever tool says it's a 6 or 7.
Or before we had the tool, they would just build the deck and be like, it's probably a 7, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. But
yeah,
now,
exactly.
But I mean, what we did with our power levels and what we're hoping people will do with the brackets is to start with a goal in mind of where you're trying to land. What is your goal in trying to build your deck?
Yes, exactly. Not just build a deck and say, well, Moxfield says it's a 3, but be very intentional about that and try to build towards that level. Right, exactly. Now, back to the problem. 3 is also very broad. So if we're going to be saying building a deck at a 3, it's going to be difficult to understand like what subset of 3 you're trying to accomplish. And I think that was part of like my main problem with the power bracket system is that they called 4 optimized, but in our bracket system, which is taking 2, 3, and 4 and adding subcategories between 2 and 3
between
and 3
each
and
of
4,
them,
between each of them, is that we could optimize within those subcategories, build optimal decks within those subcategories. Oh, again, towards the spirit of what we thought those categories would, the game experience those tables would be experiencing, right? But we could still optimize them and make them like good decks. And I don't like that they've taken this term of optimization and said, oh, an optimal deck plays game changers and does all these things, right?
Yeah. It does it kind of pushes you into a higher power level. Or I think what my worry is that if I build a 3 and I don't include game changers, or I include game changers, but I don't do, I include my 3 allotted game changers and then don't do any optimizing beyond that, I don't know how it's going to match up with the other decks at the table, right? So what it's encouraging me to do, honestly, like my feedback is, if I go to an event or a MagicCon, I probably fall into 3 categories where I want to play a pre-con against other pre-cons so that I know that everyone's going to have a good experience, or I want to play a 3 that is fairly optimized and just runs 3 game changers, and that helps me know that, hey, I'm not going to be, just like at the bottom of a pod, or just play a 4 or CEDH, right? So it makes me kind of want to push into the highest power of each bracket, just so that there's like no chance for misunderstandings.
Yeah, I mean, so I just right now I'm looking at my CDH list, right?
Sure.
And I was trying to think like the difference between a 3 and a 4, like how many game changers actually are you running? Like what's the jump, right? Because to me, if I'm running
as many as you can play out of those 40 cards, probably.
But that's the thing is like I don't think so.
And I do think that is part of what my problem is with 3 is like if I don't have if it's not a pre-con, then I just throw 3 game changers in, right?
Right. And there are a lot of like incredibly powerful cards that aren't game changers. And so that's what I think makes 3 so broad is that like there are a lot of things that weren't listed on the game changers list that can like objectively impact the power level of your deck such that it will outperform other 3s that are including 3 game changers but aren't playing the same powerful cards.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about some of I know we had it on our list here to talk about some of those exclusions. Do you want to talk about those now?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, let's do it.
So I think one thing that's really interesting to me is that there are 40 game changers. And I don't know where that number came from. And it probably has to be arbitrary, where they just said there was a cutoff, like we're only going to include 40. But the problem with that is 41 through 50 of that list that didn't make the cut are still incredibly powerful. And I actually think that the drop-off in power level happens more at 50 than it does at 40. I think that like the drop-off of power level, like 40's right here, and then 50, and then it starts to decline. And so there's like a group of cards that are incredibly powerful that now just have, quote unquote, free reign in anything better than a pre-con.
Yeah, and that's the thing that's crazy to me is that I imagined that at 40, right? They were saying, okay, on the margin, this is where things like get significantly worse. But if you look at some of the cards that aren't included in the game changers, you have like Deadly Relic and Deflecting Swat, which are both free interaction, right? And they're
And
not
Force
first
of
guardianship.
Negation, which is free interaction.
And Force of Negation and Pact of Negation and Flare of Denial and whatever. And obviously those have some of those have like very real costs associated with them. But if I'm sitting down at bracket 3 pod, I expect maybe a Fierce Guardianship, right? At least in our experience, if I'm sitting down at a mid power level game, I don't expect to be interacted with free interaction hardly at all.
Yeah. What about a Mana Drain?
Right.
Or an Esper Sentinel, or Teferi's Protection, or Mystic Remora, or Worldly Tutor, or Sylvan Library, or Diabolic Intent, or Bowmasters. Like, those cards can warp a game so much. And so just thinking that it's the system, to me, in a way, encourages people to play these cards at a higher density at mid power.
Yes.
Because it's written into the rules now, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that there's just such a big difference between playing a precon, which is a bracket level 2, and then playing in bracket level 3 and seeing all of these.
100%.
Like, that's a huge jump.
And I think that's the really tough problem is like, I think people will generally be good actors, and we want to be good actors and build towards like the spirit of a bracket 3 deck. However, it is broad enough that it is impossible to know. Like, should I be running all of these spells?
Build it towards the spirit of a bracket 3 deck. From what is written, this is the spirit of a bracket 3 deck, is that you run these, right? Like, the only restraints on bracket 3 are no mass land denial, no chaining extra turns, and then no early game 2-card infinite combos.
Right. So if I cast a Jessica's Will, and then I Flare of Duplication, sacking my commander to copy Jessica's Will with the modes, then like we're chilling. That's bracket 3.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The thing is that doesn't feel like bracket 3 to me.
That doesn't feel one step above precon.
Right, exactly. It doesn't feel one step above precon.
That's where the big jump is happening, because I actually don't think the jump between 3 and 4 is that big. Like, it's unlocking, I don't know, in an average deck, like 10 to 15 cards that you would want to play that are just the most efficient cards in the format. But like at the top end of a bracket 3, you're still doing busted stuff. Like, you're still doing very, very good stuff. So I don't know. It just feels like the jump from bracket 2 to bracket 3 is so much bigger than bracket 3 to bracket 4. And that really leaves anyone who wants to play like a mid power level game kind of lost without upgrading your deck significantly.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, like, we built our casual decks. I have my casual Tassiger deck that I love now. And if I wanted to take that to a con and be like, check out this cool casual Tassiger deck, I would have to say, okay, Deadly Relic, Force of Negation, Mana Drain, put like Bowmasters or whatever, like put all these very powerful cards in that Worldly Tutor. It's crazy that Worldly Tutor's not on that list.
Yeah, they talked about, I listened to the Command Zone episode where they talked about the brackets, and one thing they were speculating on in terms of why Worldly Tutor was not included in the final list was all decks, for the most part, are equipped to handle a creature. Whereas, like, not every deck is equipped to handle, like, a combo piece that you may be getting with your Demonic Tutor, right?
Yeah, but, like, end step Worldly Tutor, Craterhoof Behemoth? Like,
yeah,
what?
I know. Like, it doesn't completely hold water, but I do understand that they had to cut off the list at some point. I do feel, however, that maybe 50 would have been a better number than 40. However, that's going to change, because 40 can't be a limit. And then because we already know that they're going to be unbanning cards. And as they unban cards, my guess is a lot of them would go straight to the Game Changers list, right?
Yeah,
they're not just going to like release them freely into the format. They're going to monitor them by putting on the Game Changers list. And there's going to be new busted cards that are printed that need to go to the Game Changers list. So I'm guessing they just chose 40 for whatever reason to test things out. And maybe they purposefully left some of these more powerful cards off the game changers list to see what impact it had, to see how often they were cropping up and if they were a problem, or if the format was still self-regulating where someone's like, yeah, I still don't feel good playing a mana drain in a bracket 3. I don't think that's the case. I think people are going to min-max the crap out of every bracket. But I do wonder if that's one of the things that they're testing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the hardest part for me is like, I want to fight against the urge to like min max in a specific bracket. However, it has been very, very refreshing to have our power level system where we have set guardrails in place to be able to kind of min max within a power level
without banning anything.
Without banning anything, so that I can play an optimized deck within the constraints of that. Power level, right? And
that's why I like to play it.
And it might be slower, but like the deck is going to function well.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, that's where I like to play. I love to play at like that low to mid power levels. That's like my favorite place to play casual Commander with my friends. And I do not feel like I am going to be able to reliably get that at an event using this bracketing system, because I am going to hedge my bets against people min-maxing by probably just playing higher power, just playing like a higher bracket.
Yeah, I mean,
or just precons, like I said.
Yeah, ultimately what's going to happen is that I think people are going to go to events, and some people are going to play precons, and some people are going to play bracket 2 decks against the precons, right?
Sure.
And they're just going to be so much better, right? Because precons, as good as they've gotten, are not optimized. They're not running the correct amounts of anything, and so I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting for sure. Can
I say that I do love the Game Changers list? Like, I think that is an elegant solution to this. I think it's very interesting. I think they need to change up the list a little bit. Like we talked about, they're just still very powerful cards, and I think the drop off is a little lower down. And then I think they could mix up the numbers of cards that you're allowed to have in each deck or something. I don't know. Something needs to happen between 2 and 4 in terms of brackets.
Yeah,
but what I love about the Game Changers list is it gives us a future where there can be fewer bans, because the most powerful cards and the most egregious cards are going to be limited to just higher power levels. And that's awesome. I think I'm on the train of, hey, unban everything and let power levels govern where people are putting cards in their decks. And I also really like that they tried putting a few commanders on the Game Changers list, because it effectively puts in place banned as commander. Well, I mean, banned in the deck at all, but you're probably only playing them as a commander in lower power levels, right?
Right.
So like
100%.
Get Golos on there, right? Don't ban Golos across the format. Just put it on the Game Changers list and keep it out of lower power decks.
Yeah. Right, exactly. No, I think it's a really like you said, an elegant solution. One of the things I like about it too is that it hopefully will start to remove the stigma around some of these like really expensive reserved list cards too. That like I haven't been playing a Wheel of Fortune in my deck because I don't have a Wheel of Fortune, and because I'm worried I'll play Wheel of Fortune. People are like, whoa, Wheel of Fortune, that's way too strong. And the fact that it's not even like approaching the Game Changers list to me is like, okay, sweet. Like this is a premier draw in red. I think red decks should be able to run this because they just are lacking in terms of draw for the most part. I want to run Wheel of Fortune, and hopefully it not being on the Game Changers list will make people think, oh, it's like Wheel of Fortune, right? Which also I think means they need to put stuff like Deflecting Swap, Mana Drain.
Those have got to be on the Game Changers list, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I would hope so.
There's so many ways to abuse some of those cards, even at lower powers.
And I think a way that they could pretty easily expand the Game Changers list without making it too arbitrary or too difficult to parse, I guess, would be to add like good subcategories to Game Changers, right?
Oh, sure.
Like tutors, they've already talked about tutors explicitly in the brackets. I think you could just say, hey, these are the tutors on our Game Changers list. These are the free spells on our Game Changers list. These are the game-altering spells or advantage engines or stacks pieces. And I think you could add some of those subcategories that would help them be easier to organize and easier to like quickly check, right?
Yeah.
Because I like that they're separated by colors right now, but it's also like I mean, I guess that's easy to check too, but as it expands, it might just be harder to be able to I don't know. At least for me, it's easier to parse that way as I'm like adding fetches to my decks, right?
Yeah, because right now the game changers list is just sorted by color, right?
Right.
And you're just like, oh, okay, like there's a bunch of busted stuff in blue. And
Yeah,
not as much in green.
Right,
But
exactly. And I think
having categories would help you understand the reason better.
yeah, exactly. And even give you like help you know like what's on the bubble within those different categories,
Sure.
right? Of like worldly tutor, oh, it's not on the list. But these tutors these are kind of the bubble for like what are
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, totally. It's like, yeah, where is the line in terms of tutors? And like, Diabolic Intent, like I said, isn't on there, and Grim Tutor isn't on there. But looking at the tutors they do have, I can imagine that there like might be a little wiggle room in there. Like maybe someday Diabolic Intent does make it on there, even though it has a very real cost, right, to playing Diabolic Intent. But
right.
Yeah. I mean, like Worldly Tutor, Finale of Devastation, Green Sun Zenith, like none of those are on there.
Yeah, I mean it's
but
just
I could see them
like,
getting on there.
Yeah, and like Entomb is not on there, I don't think. Is Entomb on there? Oh, it is. Oh, it's not on there.
No, it's not.
Yeah, I mean, because like, okay, so if we're talking about like really efficient like 2-card combos as well, like that's one of the things that is going to push, like late game 2-card combos is what they're talking about, right? The problem is
infinite combos,
right? But let's talk about like your Animate Dead and Abdel Adrian or World Dragon or whatever, right?
Sure.
Technically, that can be like a late game combo. However,
absolutely,
you're just getting that into your graveyard and casting that. So maybe
Entomb.
that doesn't go in like your 3.
Yeah.
Maybe that breaks the spirit of a 3. But I understand maybe banning Enlightened Tutor so you can't find Animate Dead, right? But like Entomb certainly gets that into your graveyards. I don't know. It's just there's lots of nuance about it, and it's tough to know where the line is. But I think there's levers they can still pull, and I hope that they truly do listen to feedback going up into April, where I think they've promised unbans but not bans potentially.
I think so. I think that's what it was, and I do think they're going to approach it very slowly. Like I don't think they're just going to like unban like half the cards off of the ban list. Like I think that we're going to see like a few at a time, and the Game Changers list is going to be a way. They said like the Game Changers list is also a way for us to monitor what could potentially be banned in the future, because they see these as the most powerful cards in the format. So I was actually curious, is there anything that you are nervous about getting banned because you see it on the Game Changers list?
Oh man, let me pull up the list really quick. Commander Game Changers.
I mean, I am. I mean,
yeah,
there's some
tell me
cool
about yours.
cards
I'm
on
gonna look through
here.
here. You tell me about yours, the ones you're worried about.
I mean, I'm worried about a lot of the, like you said, Wheel of Fortune is just, it has a stigma because of how expensive it is.
Right.
There are other reserved list cards on this list that I think people should proxy and play. And they are very expensive, and they're also very powerful. So I worry that the combination of something being expensive and powerful would lead Wizards to, especially because there's no reprint equity for them because they're on the reserved list, to ban those cards so that they are not problematic. So things like Sarah Sanctum, Gaia's Cradle, Grim Monolith. What else is on there that's reserved list? Maybe that's it that's on there that's reserved list. But those cards, like Lion's Eye Diamond.
Yeah, Survival of the Fittest, sure.
Yeah, Mox Diamond.
Tabernacle of Pendrell Vale.
Yeah. Oh, that is even on the list. That's so funny.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, so those cards I do worry may have a target on their backs just because of them being expensive reserved list cards that also happen to be some of the most powerful cards in the format.
Yeah, I mean,
and I think people should get to play with their cards.
Yeah, the thing that kind of surprises me, honestly, about some of these on the Game Changers list too is like Lion's Eye Diamond is like a very powerful card. However,
so narrow,
and Underworld Breach is also on this list. So
and
like
Underworld Breach is less narrow. They're good together,
right?
But like Lion's Eye is not as good without the Underworld Breach, whereas Underworld Breach is just good.
Right, exactly. Like the niche applications of Lion's Eye Diamond are almost exclusively with Underworld Breach.
Yeah.
And so I think if you have Breach on this list, you probably don't need Lion's Eye on this list because people can just
or vice versa.
I mean, Breach is.
Would you rather have Breach or Lion's Eye on this list? Probably Breach, right?
Probably. I mean, Breach is just like incredibly good.
Yeah.
Like Breach is
Not
Breach
not
is,
that it matters. Not that it matters because you could run the full Breach combo in a 3.
in a 3. You could run
Yeah.
the whole Lion's Eye Diamond, Brain Freeze, Underworld Breach,
Yeah.
Lion's Eye Diamond, Windfall, or not? Yeah, Windfall or Wheel of Fortune or whatever.
Because a lot of the other pieces of that combo line are not on this list. So you could play, Lion's Eye Diamond, Underworld Breach, and then a bunch of others, and you still have one game changer card to put in your deck.
Yeah, though that does potentially go, and that's technically a 3-card combo.
Yeah,
so it does
that's what I'm saying.
not go against the spirit.
That's what
of the
I'm
3.
saying.
That's
This
crazy.
is the issue that I have with how broad 3 is. And like I said, I don't want it to feel like I'm harshing on this system because I love this system. I love that they're doing something. I love the game changers list. I think we should have the game changers list and unban everything and put everything on the game changers list. But one of my major problem, the thing that I think will be the most broken and cause the most feel bads at events, is how crowded bracket 3 is. We have 5 power levels, right?
Yes.
From low to high. We have 5 power levels. Those are represented in their brackets. 3 of those are represented in their one bracket. In bracket 3 is our 2, 3, and 4.
Yes.
And so the fact that they've condensed, I would say, the majority of a bell curve worth of power levels into a single bracket is way too broad.
Or at least like one standard deviation, right? Which is like, I don't know, like 60% or something. It's crazy.
Into 20% of their bracket.
Yeah, which I think is not, I think is not a wise move. Now, that being said, like you spread that out into 3 additional, right? So you have 3 is now, 3, 4, 5, and then, or whatever they're doing, right?
Sure.
But I think if you spread that into 3, that still leaves the very middle bracket, like the 3 on our system, still has like a plurality of the decks, hopefully, right?
Yeah.
But that's like expected. I don't think
Absolutely.
you expect it to have actually a majority of decks or 3s.
Yeah.
Right. And the problem
not
with
just
that
a
is, like,
plurality, but a majority.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I do think I think it's true that like a majority of decks are 3s, and I think Wizards might have made that and thought, sick, we hit a majority of decks. But the problem is that's a majority of decks, and it's also very broad still.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like,
and especially because I'm trying to think if it was in the article or if they just talked about it. I think the expectation is that you can play one power level away, one bracket away.
that's even crazier to me because
I know.
Because a precon could never hang. Like,
No,
Yeah.
that's putting a precon against the LED breach line.
yeah, right.
Right? That's crazy.
Right. It could never ever hang. We played a lot of
No.
precon games recently, and it could never. And I think that is like, I think if you were to split 3 into 3 different power levels, 100%.
I think so too.
Hang one away.
And I realize that people might be like, oh, then you're just going back to a 1 to 10 scale. But I actually think you can look at it very differently because these are brackets. This is not a scale. I think maybe the issue is looking at it like a scale where I think what needs to happen is they're brackets, but 3 has some sort of scale, right? Where it's like, 1 is exhibition. Those are like the meme decks, right? And that is a category. That doesn't belong on a power level scale. And CEDH is a category. It's tournament EDH. Like, it is different.
Right, it's like
a
an adjacent category to optimized, right? It's like optimized and then tournament optimized, right?
And then I think it's still okay to have like a precon category, bracket, and an optimized no holds barred bucket category, whatever. But then for everything in the middle, everything that's not part of one of those categories, everything that's just mid casual homebrew whatever, that's not trying to be optimized, that does need to have some sort of like a scale, some sort of power level.
Well, I think so. Like we've talked about, we've done a 5-point scale. Exhibition is not on our scale. CDH is not on our scale. Yeah. I think you could keep this casual 5-point scale and you add 2 additional brackets between 2 and 3 and 3 and 4. Yep. And you move exhibition and CDH to just adjacent categories.
A new line
that don't apply to this 5-point scale. And ta-da, you still have a 5-point scale that actually gives you functional categories that aren't pre-con, powerful, and then everything in between.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's tough. Well, I'm really excited about this. I'm excited to give this a try. We're gonna be trying to play at some LGSs a little bit more and get a taste for this. But I'm trying to figure out what deck I'm going to bring or build. I'll probably build a new deck, to be honest, to try with this. And I'm probably going to try and build a 3. Like, I'm probably going to try and build like a bracket 3, put in 3 game changers, and see how it feels.
And then,
right?
and then every other banger that
and
is
then,
just like,
and then Mystic Remora and yeah, all the other bangers. Orcish Bowmasters.
yeah, I mean, so, okay, like I'm kind of dunking on it a little bit. I do want to say I counted the number of game changers in my CEDH Tactiker deck, and
Sure.
it is 15.
15 out of 40.
15 out of 40, right?
So, and that's in a 3-color deck.
And that's in a 3-color deck, right?
So I think that's probably like what you would expect on average out of a 4 or 5 bracket.
Out of a
deck,
5.
right?
The thing is, though, is I do feel like there are probably going to be 4s that like maybe run 8 of them. Like, I just don't think, like, if I look at, we brewed you a Glarb list as an example. Let's pull that one up. Okay, that one still plays a lot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It still plays 15, but it's also playing all the fast mana. So like,
I was gonna say that I think
like Chrome Mox and everything like that, but I don't know.
Yeah, but why not? Like, if you're playing a 4, it's no holds barred. So why are you not playing all the fast mana?
Yeah, I guess. Because...
Am I gonna play Am I gonna play a Talisman over Grim Monolith?
Right. No, probably not. But like, I don't know if I'd be playing like Chrome Mox and Mox Amber. Like,
no, those don't go in every deck, right? Those are those, but like Ancient Tomb, Windmill Slam in every deck that's allowed, right? Which we don't play. I don't have Ancient Tomb in a deck right now because, like, in our group's power levels, it lies in an area where we're not actively playing, and so it's not in a deck right now. But like, if I'm gonna play a 4 at a Magic Con, why would I not put Ancient Tomb in the deck?
Yeah, I guess I'm still interpreting it as like the highest power on our scale, which did have the caveat of this is the most powerful thing you're doing. There's still probably a theme, right? The theme isn't just winning, right? So, I mean, I just looked at the Garth deck that I built with that assumption, and it has 10. So I do think, and it's a 5-color deck, right? It's not playing like Ad Nauseum or other stuff like that, but like
it's still playing a lot.
But it's like it's a lot. But I don't think like it's just I don't know.
Also don't think Expropriate goes in every deck. That's another one where I'm actually
that one felt weird.
Think it's weird that it's on the thing, but I'm sure it's because people abuse Expropriate, right? And that I only expect to be happening in our play group. That would only happen at higher power. Like I wouldn't blink. I don't think if someone played an Expropriate in a mid power deck, if they weren't abusing it.
Right.
Like, yeah, it's a powerful spell, but it's 9 mana.
Yeah, I think part of the thing was like chaining extra turns too, which like that can do technically.
Oh, sure. Like it's got, extra turns printed on the card.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, multiple extra turns in one card if people vote poorly. No, yeah. I mean I agree. I think I was trying to decide how many more game changers of power level like a bracket 4 deck would run than a bracket 3 deck at 3 game changers. And if it was really only like 4, then to me that speaks to the fact that 3 is an even
I think it's probably a
category.
multiplier. I think it's probably like 3 to 5 times as many from 3 to 4.
Yeah, probably. That makes sense. So, but I do think that like if you are building the best 3 you can, it's like a step away from a 4. And I think we need to work on making
I think so too, especially in green. Like I have a mono green deck, and if I expect to play that at a 3, there is no difference between a mono green bracket 3 and a mono green bracket 4 because there's only 3 game changer cards on the list.
Yeah,
and I'm probably not even playing at least 2 of them. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly. So I don't know. It's tough. It's tough. My overall feedback, Gavin, if you're listening by some crazy means to this video, 3 is too broad.
Yeah.
There needs to be either an extra step in between 2 and 3 and 3 and 4, or there needs to be some sort of scale within 3 that
Sure.
helps give people additional deck building goals to practice intent in deck building.
100%. Because the intent is just not clear at that level, I think.
No.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want other reasons to decide whether or not to run cards besides a list,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you can give more specific intent to 3 prime and 3 double prime or whatever you're calling
Yeah.
it, right? Like that a 2.9 and 3.1 or whatever.
Yeah.
That if you can give like more specific intent to those, I think it'll be easier to take that intent back towards the deck building process. Because right now, I do think that you need to push it towards the deck building process, right? The problem is
People have
because
decks
3 is-
already built.
Well, yes, and because 3 is, that's one problem, right? I think it's a problem with the whole bracket system in general. Like we don't play any of the decks that we built before our power level system. I don't think.
No.
Right.
No, not without dramatically rebuilding them.
Oh, exactly. But I do think that like another problem is if we're taking the intent towards deck building, which I think is the correct thing to be doing, if you are not specific enough or have enough buckets that people will build with the intent of building a 3 and they'll just be broken. Like they'll just be incredibly powerful, right?
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
so
Which I honestly, like I said, I can't blame them because in their mind, they're thinking, well, I can do these things. Why wouldn't I? Because if I don't do these things, other people at the table are going to do these things. And then I'm going to have a bad game. And so it's almost like there's like the shared expectations that you kind of have to build the best 3 that you can in order to keep up at a table. That's what it feels like. That's what I'm worried about. I'd like to think that I'm not going to do that, but the way I avoid that is probably just by playing 4s and precons and 5.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I guess that's always kind of been the allure of CEDH is that like there is no rule 0.
Yeah, exactly. That
it doesn't have the problem.
And say we're all playing to win. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, which is why it probably doesn't belong need a point in the bracket system. Is like this is solving a problem that CEDH has never had.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's the thing is like a lot of the CEDH community. I think it's very important that they aren't like shoved to the side. I like that they're on this
still
scale
Commander.
because it is Commander. It's like it's just the most competitive version of Commander. However, I think you could accomplish the same thing by saying, "Hey, Exhibition and CEDH aren't on this scale because it's a solved problem." Right?
Yeah. Because you're not worried about winning in Exhibition, and you're only worried about winning in CEDH.
Right.
And then everything else needs the bracket system to be able to tell where they're at on that scale.
Exactly. 100%. 100%.
Well, that is going to be it, everybody. But before you go, we are making progress on setting up a Commander night for people located in like Salt Lake, Utah Valley in Utah. So if you want to join us, if you want to come play with us, we would really love to see you. It'd be so much fun to get a game in with you. So join our Discord because we'll be posting all the details about it there. You can find the link in our channel description.
Everybody, thank you for listening. Please check out the rest of our videos. Make sure this gets to Gavin Verhey if you listen and you know him, because I think there's some room to grow with the bracket system, but we're so stoked about it. It's going to be so great to help people have Rule Zero conversations. Please like and subscribe, and until next time, remember to always pay the one.